My name is Remy, I'm 28 years old, and I reside in the vibrant New York City. The rhythm of life here is exhilarating, and I appreciate it just as it is. I reside in a cozy apartment, conveniently located near my workplace, where I serve as a marketing strategist at a mid-sized firm. I have spent a few years here, and it's quite a cozy arrangement. The compensation is satisfactory, the colleagues are pleasant, and I have a reliable schedule that suits me well. Each morning, I rise at 7, savor a cup of coffee, and prepare for the day that lies ahead. I've always been someone who prefers to maintain simplicity. I'm not aiming for massive recognition in the corporate sphere, yet I also wish to keep pace. My work provides a satisfying level of challenge that keeps things engaging, yet it doesn't overwhelm me with stress. I've achieved a solid equilibrium. I have the means to enjoy the things I desire, and my financial concerns have significantly lessened compared to the past. It may lack glamour, yet it offers a sense of comfort. And for me, that suffices. The day began just like any other. As I sat at my desk, I immersed myself in the flow of emails and meticulously reviewed the reports before me. Nothing particularly thrilling, just the same old routine. At midday, I rose to fetch a bite to eat from the deli just down the road. I frequently engage in this activity to refresh my mind for a brief period. Upon my return, I found myself in my cubicle, idly scrolling through my phone, when something peculiar caught my attention. I received a message from Mr. Smith, my superior. This occurrence was not particularly remarkable on its own. He frequently reaches out for updates or inquiries regarding a particular project. Yet, this one stood apart. It was not a question pertaining to work in any way. It was a beckoning. "Remy, would you mind coming to my office?" The note read, "I must talk to you." Initially, it didn't seem significant to me. I thought it was merely a standard procedure. Perhaps he intended to inquire about the progress of a project or engage in a conversation regarding team matters. Yet, I began to ponder, what was it that made him want to meet with me in particular? I have been employed here for some time, yet I haven't had significant personal interactions with Mr. Smith. There was no specific cause for my unease, yet the feeling persisted quietly in the recesses of my thoughts. I dismissed it casually. It was likely insignificant. I quickly responded, saying, "Sure, I'll be there in a minute." As he strolled toward his office, curiosity piqued within me about the nature of this encounter. Mr. Smith had always maintained a certain aloofness, yet his professionalism was undeniable. There was no sign that he had any issues with me or that my work was lacking in any way. What prompted the unexpected call to his office? I rapped on the door and pushed it open, anticipating the familiar sight of Mr. Smith seated at his desk, just as he always was. Upon entering, I was taken aback to find another person occupying the chair opposite the desk. It was not Mr. Smith. Adele was his wife. I stood still for a brief instant. A wave of uncertainty swept through me. Adele, at 32, exuded an elegant, almost intimidating aura. Her presence in the office was infrequent, and when she did appear, it was typically for company gatherings or a brief meeting with Mr. Smith. However, witnessing her unexpectedly seated in his office caught me completely off guard. She raised her gaze to meet mine, a serene smile gracing her lips as she motioned for me to take a seat. "Is it Remy?" she inquired, her tone warm and inviting, yet there was an undertone that stirred a hint of discomfort within me. "Mr. Smith had to take a brief leave. He requested that I discuss a few matters with you." I nodded, feeling a bit perplexed yet eager to maintain politeness. "Absolutely." Our conversation began. She inquired about the most recent project I was engaged in and a few other minor aspects of my work. Everything was quite typical, nothing particularly unusual. I was still grappling with the reality that she was present in place of Mr. Smith. What was the reason for her dealing with this? Why didn't he choose to talk to me? Just when I believed the conversation was coming to a close, she caught me off guard with an unexpected revelation. "I realize this may come off as a bit unconventional," she remarked, her tone taking on a subtle change, "but I was wondering if we could get together after work today." I have a matter I'd like to share with you, something intimate. For a moment, I found myself at a loss for words. I never anticipated this, particularly not from my boss's wife. It was an unusual blend of intrigue and wariness. We had never truly engaged in a personal conversation prior to this. She was pleasant, yet we didn't really spend time together beyond work events. The notion of her wanting to meet me, just the two of us, after work felt somewhat unsettling, to be frank. Yet, I found myself captivated. I agreed to meet, despite the cautious whispers of my mind. When and where will it be? She beamed. I will send you the details shortly. It will be refreshing to engage in a meaningful conversation away from the confines of the office. I consented, even though uncertainty loomed over what lay ahead. The remainder of the day unfolded, yet that dialogue continued to echo in my mind. What was her reason for wanting to meet with me? What might this pertain to? Thus, I encountered a pivotal choice. A sense of anticipation hung in the air, and I found myself questioning whether I was truly prepared for what was to come. For the moment, my only option was to remain patient and observe what unfolded next. Once the workday concluded, I took a moment to glance at my phone. Adele had sent me the details, just as she promised. A location for a quaint little cafe tucked away in the more serene part of the city. It was close, yet it was an unexpected location. The majority of our office frequented upscale venues for meetings or drinks afterward. Yet this cafe was hidden, almost invisible from the main road. I arrived a few minutes early, observing the almost vacant area. A couple lingered by the window, deeply engrossed in their conversation, while an older man occupied a spot at the counter, mindlessly stirring his coffee. The ambience was serene, accompanied by gentle melodies drifting through the air. Suddenly, the door swung open, and in walked Adele. She didn't appear as the sophisticated, unreachable figure I typically encountered at corporate gatherings. Instead, she donned a straightforward black sweater paired with jeans. Laid back, nearly indistinguishable. She noticed me right away and came over with a faint, weary smile. I appreciate you being here, she remarked, settling into her seat across from me. I nodded, my mind swirling with uncertainty about the purpose of this situation. For a brief moment, she remained silent. She gazed down at the table, her fingers gently tapping against her coffee cup after the waiter delivered her drinks. At last, she let out a breath. You might find this odd, she remarked. Perhaps it is, but I simply needed to converse with someone outside of my personal sphere. I found myself at a loss for words, so I simply remained silent and waited. She looked my way, then let out a brief, mirthless chuckle. I can't quite figure out what led me to choose you. I sensed she wasn't anticipating a response, so I remained silent. Following a brief silence, she pressed on. I feel exhausted, Remy. Weary of maintaining the facade that all is well. She swirled her coffee with a distracted air. Being married to Mr. Smith is not quite what it seems. I arched an eyebrow. Could you clarify what you mean? She let out a deep breath. All eyes are drawn to the wealth, the prestige, the lavish gowns. Yet, the solitude remains unnoticed by all. She paused before adding, the way he treats me. A peculiar tension hung in the atmosphere. This was more than mere casual venting. She was revealing herself in a manner that felt profoundly intimate. And for some inexplicable reason, she had selected me to be the one to hear it. I reclined a bit in my chair, attempting to absorb her words. I tapped my fingers on the table, pondering the perfect response. All right, I responded with a measured tone, but how is any of this relevant to my situation? I surveyed the cafe, acutely conscious of the stillness enveloping the space. My voice lowered a bit. Our acquaintance is quite limited. We've had our conversations, no doubt, but they've solely revolved around business matters. I am employed by your husband, Adele. What prompted you to bring me here? She exhaled softly, massaging her temple as if weighing the decision to respond. Hesitation danced in her eyes, a fleeting spark of doubt. That only heightened my discomfort. Be truthful with me, I urged, leaning in closer. Could this lead to my dismissal? Her eyes shot up to meet mine. For a moment, she appeared nearly wounded. "No, that's not what this is, Remy." I inquired about what it might be. "Let's get straight to the point. If Mr. Smith discovers this, or even gets wind of my being alone with you, it's over for me." "What about my career?" "Finished." I let out a quick breath, tilting my head in disbelief. It's important to grasp how this appears through my lens. She observed me intently for a prolonged moment, then gave a nod. "I understand, and I completely respect your need for caution. So, what is it about me?" I inquired once more, with greater urgency this time. "Why not consider a friend? Or perhaps someone not connected to the workplace? What brings me here?" Adele's smile held a hint of sorrow beneath the surface. She swirled her coffee gently, as though collecting her reflections. "You know," she said softly, "I've observed you in your element." Not in a creepy way, she added quickly, noticing my expression, but in a manner that shows I pay attention to details. "You stand apart from the rest." I scowled. "In what way is it different?" "You put in a lot of effort," she remarked. "You maintain a strong sense of discipline and respect, never resorting to flattery for personal gain. I appreciate that." She paused briefly before adding, "And you're kind. Such a thing is uncommon in an environment like that." A blink caught me off guard. "I truly appreciate that. However, I have my reservations about trusting many people, Remy," she interjected softly. "However, I sense a level of trust in you." I gazed at her, attempting to comprehend the unfolding situation. This was the spouse of my superior. Elegant, refined, and entirely beyond my reach in every conceivable way. She confided in me her trust. That she had been focused on me. And for the first time that night, a revelation struck me. This extended beyond the confines of her marriage. The focus was on me. Nearly a month had slipped by since that night in the Serene Cafe. I haven't laid eyes on Adele since then. Honestly, I thought that was the conclusion of our peculiar exchange. I returned to my usual routine. Labor, exercise, rest, and do it all over again. Suddenly, a message appeared, seemingly out of thin air. It was straightforward. Merely an address in a nearby city, a specific time, and a brief note. "A vehicle will be ready for you if you wish." I gazed at my phone, absorbing the message repeatedly. No explanation was provided. No additional information provided. Only the invitation. A clever individual would overlook it. A cautious individual would erase the message and act as if it never crossed his path. However, I didn't fit the mold of either of those individuals. I acted with caution. Yet, I found no fear within me. Above all, my curiosity was piqued. I responded. "I will be present." As dusk settled in, I carefully packed a small bag. Nothing out of the ordinary. Merely a change of attire, should the need arise. I stood patiently outside my apartment. Just as expected, a polished black sedan glided to a stop at the curb. The tinted window slid down slightly, allowing the driver to give me a nod. Silence speaks volumes. Skip the formalities. I made it in. The journey unfolded effortlessly. Nearly flawless. The driver remained silent. I refrained from asking questions. We departed from the city, gliding along endless roads until the silhouette of another city emerged on the horizon. It exuded a sense of refinement and sophistication that surpassed my own surroundings. At last, the vehicle came to a halt before an upscale dining establishment. A location where the very atmosphere exuded a sense of luxury. A type of establishment I would never enter alone. I emerged, straightening my jacket, and entered the space. And there she stood. Adele. She occupied a secluded booth tucked away at the rear. Adorned in a striking deep red gown that seemed fit for a cinematic icon. Her dark hair flowed in gentle waves over her shoulders. Her makeup is impeccable. She embodied elegance in every way. She lifted her gaze as I drew near. For the first time, I noticed a change in her gaze. Something whimsical. Perhaps even a bit playful. Before I could utter a single word, she rose and leaned in, gently pressing her lips against my cheek. "Remy," she whispered, her lips almost grazing my skin. "It brings me such joy that you decided to join us." I found myself uncertain about what I had anticipated. Yet, when Adele pressed her lips to my cheek, a peculiar blend of thrill and discomfort washed over me. The ambience was more than just the upscale restaurant. It was a realm I would typically never inhabit. Her gaze held a certain intensity that captivated me. As if I held significance. This was far from a mere casual dinner. "Come, sit," she invited, motioning to the chair opposite her. I settled into the soft leather chair, and almost immediately, a waiter emerged, pouring us each a glass of wine. Adele placed the order for both of us with confidence, as though she had an instinct for my preferences. It flowed seamlessly, without any struggle. As the night progressed, the dialogue unfolded with a surprising ease. She inquired about my life, delving into my childhood, my aspirations, and my regrets, not limiting the conversation to work alone. I discovered that I was sharing with her thoughts and feelings I hadn't expressed in a long time. And she paid attention, truly paid attention. She chuckled at my tales, drew closer when I shared, and playfully poked fun at my tendency to overanalyze. "You always seem to be trying to anticipate everything before it happens," she remarked, tilting her head. "It's time to loosen your grip a bit, Remy. Simply savor the experience." After quite a while, I finally did. The dinner lingered on for hours. The meal was extraordinary, with steak cooked to perfection, exquisite appetizers whose names eluded me, and desserts that dissolved delightfully on my palate. Yet beyond that, it was the companionship. In that moment, she transcended the role of merely being my boss's wife. She was a person who grasped my essence in a manner that took me by surprise. Following dinner, she proposed that we go for a stroll. The eatery was situated by the waterfront, where the shimmering city lights danced upon the undulating waves. The air had a refreshing chill, yet it was far from frigid. For once, I found myself unhurried, content to simply be in the moment. We meandered by the water's edge, gliding past clusters of individuals. The distant hum of the city recedes into the background. Adele strolled alongside me, her arm lightly grazing against mine. "I haven't experienced a night like this in years," she confessed, gazing out at the water. I looked at her, anticipating her next words. "Every aspect of my life is meticulously organized and thoughtfully considered," she remarked. Yet, this evening, there was a distinct feeling in the air. She pivoted to confront me, her gaze probing into my own. "Did it feel different for you as well?" A gentle breath escaped me, a subtle smile dancing on my lips. Indeed, it truly did. For the first time in ages, my mind was free from thoughts of work, obligations, or repercussions. I wasn't attempting to dissect every detail. In that moment, everything felt perfect, and it truly was one of the finest nights I had experienced in years. As we stood there, the weight of the situation began to dawn on us. This evening was anything but ordinary. She was more than just a woman I had encountered by chance. She was wed to my superior. Adele, I found myself hesitating, uncertain of how to articulate what I wished to express. "I must inquire, what is it about me? What prompted your invitation for me to come here?" She released a gentle laugh, redirecting her eyes to the water. "I anticipated you would inquire about that." For a brief moment, silence enveloped us before she finally responded. "For you truly perceive me, Remy. You perceive Mr. Smith's wife in a way that transcends the ordinary view of others. You perceive me as an individual." That left me at a loss for words. Before I could reply, a gentle breeze swept her hair across her face, and she tucked it away with a delicate, nearly bashful smile. "Let's go," she urged, giving me a gentle nudge. "Shall we stroll a bit further before we make our way back?" And just like that, the moment slipped away. Yet the question continued to haunt my thoughts. What makes me the right choice? I awoke with a sense of buoyancy I hadn't experienced in ages. The night before was flawless, exceeding all my expectations. I extended my arm, grasping for my phone on the nightstand, lingering in a state of drowsiness. That was the moment I caught sight of it. A note from Mr. Smith. The subject line sent a chill through me. Confirmation. My heart raced as I struck the keys. As the images appeared on my screen, I felt a sudden catch in my breath. I was the one. Adele and I. Images captured from the previous evening. We sat together in the restaurant, strolled by the waterfront, her leaning in close, a gentle kiss on my cheek. And below them, merely a single sentence. I had faith in you, but the decision is final, you're no longer with us. Do not return. I jolted upright, my head swirling in a dizzying rush. My heart raced within me. The burden of reality descending upon me in a single moment. This is unimaginable. I quickly dialed Adele's number. The phone rang. And it rang. And it chimed. Next, voicemail. I made another attempt. Identical situation. My stomach churned with anxiety. Could she have anticipated this outcome? Had she orchestrated this? Negative. That was quite confusing. She appeared to be truly authentic. But then, what could be the reason for her silence? This required my attention. I hastily slipped into the nearest outfit and dashed out the door, my keys almost slipping my mind. The journey to the office passed in a haze. My hands clutched the wheel, so tightly that my knuckles turned pale. Upon my arrival, a sense of finality washed over me. I understood right away that it was finished. The surface of my desk was already free of clutter. A cardboard box rested neatly on the floor beside it, brimming with my belongings, my laptop, my files, and even a silly little desk plant that I had struggled to keep alive. It was utterly embarrassing. As I entered, eyes averted from me, a palpable tension filled the air. Conversations faded the instant I walked by. The murmurs began at once. With stiff hands, I grasped the box and proceeded to Mr. Smith's office, fully aware of what awaited me. Though his door stood ajar, he remained engrossed in his screen, not sparing a glance as I entered. Mr. Smith? I began with an uneven tone. He cut me off before I could complete my thought. I'm not interested in listening to that. His tone was frigid. Incisive. A tone I had never encountered from him before. I placed my trust in you, Remy. I welcomed you in. This is your task. I advanced a step. It's not as you perceive. It perfectly aligns with my thoughts. He snapped, finally meeting my gaze. His eyes were like frozen shards. Do you really believe I was unaware of what was going on? You believe I lack an audience observing my every move? I gulped. My mouth became suddenly parched. She extended an invitation to me. I spoke, my voice softer now. I did not. I have no interest in that. Stillness. He let out a quick breath, shaking his head in disbelief. I ought to have been more aware. Simply gather your belongings and go. I lingered for a moment, clutching the box tightly, anticipating, wishing for something more. An opportunity to clarify. A solution to address the issue. However, there was not. Go, he reiterated, his tone subdued yet resolute. I tightened my jaw, gave a single nod, then pivoted and exited. The end had come. The moment I stepped outside, the cold air struck me like a slap. I paused for a moment, thoughts swirling in my head. Everything was gone. What about Adele? She remained quiet. The next events unfolded in a way I could never have anticipated. I sat in my car, clutching the steering wheel with such intensity that my knuckles turned pale. The cardboard box brimming with my possessions rested on the passenger seat, taunting me. A nameplate, a handful of office supplies, and some papers that never held my interest before. It was the last vestige of my profession, the culmination of the effort I had poured into my career. And just like that, it vanished. I still couldn't fully grasp it. Just yesterday, I found myself at my desk, contemplating my work and what lies ahead. What comes next? Dismissed. Wiped clean. As if I was never significant at all. The words from Mr. Smith were etched in my mind. Your trust was placed in me. However, your employment has been terminated. Do not return. Those snapshots capture a moment, Adele and I at the restaurant, her lips brushing my cheek, our laughter echoing in the air. They were hardly controversial. Yet, they sufficed. Sufficient to convince Mr. Smith that I had turned against him. Enough to have me discarded like refuse. I had revisited each moment in my mind countless times. How could this have occurred? Was this the intention from the beginning? Adele's invitation to dinner, the manner in which she spoke to me, and how she revealed details about her life. It had all appeared so authentic. She expressed that I was a good man and that she held me in high regard. What comes next? She was completely ignoring my calls. I called her number once more. Sent directly to voicemail. I gazed at my phone, a knot tightening in my stomach. Could this have been orchestrated? Perhaps Mr. Smith had been seeking an excuse to let someone go. Perhaps he questioned my abilities from the outset, and this was merely the last straw. But why am I the one? I had never provided him with a cause for skepticism. I put in the effort, arrived punctually, and executed everything correctly. Perhaps that was the issue. Perhaps he had to eliminate someone, and I happened to be the most convenient choice. Perhaps he had already sensed something regarding Adele, and I was merely a convenient justification. Or perhaps, just perhaps, she had orchestrated this all along. That thought constricted my chest. Was this intentional on her part? Could she have anticipated this outcome? No, that was unclear. She appeared genuinely sincere, undeniably authentic. Yet, one must wonder, why was she not responding? A harsh laugh escaped my lips. I had acted foolishly. Foolish to believe I was unique. It was naive to think I could share a meal with my boss's wife and escape unscathed. Curiosity had clouded my judgment. And now, I found myself facing the consequences. I reclined my head against the seat, releasing a sharp breath. What am I meant to do now? I found myself without employment and lacking a contingency strategy. I didn't have wealth. The paycheck was essential for me. And now, due to a single night, my whole future had been thrown off course. I caught a glimpse of my image in the rearview mirror. I appeared worn out, overwhelmed. Suddenly, an idea struck me. What if this extended beyond my own experience? What if Adele found herself in a predicament as well? Mr. Smith held significant influence. If he discovered our secret, what might he do to her? Is she all right? Or had she already progressed to something new? I found myself at a loss for thoughts. I reached for my phone once more, my fingers poised above the screen. Should I give her another call? Should I simply come to terms with the fact that it has ended? I exhaled unsteadily and set the phone aside. Perhaps I was not in search of answers. Perhaps I was already aware of the truth. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Was I merely a pawn in another scheme? Was this destined to unfold all along?